Hey everyone. I'm going to try another one of these casual discussion reading reflection videos because the last time I did it seems to have gone all right, I think. So I'm looking forward to doing another one now. I haven't had too many videos up lately. I've been slacking a little bit. I can't even say it's because I've been too busy. I mean, I haven't been particularly busy. I've just, I don't know, lacked that drive to actually finish up some of the reviews that I have written several reviews and even recorded a few, which I'll mention as I talk about some of the reading I've done lately. But yeah, no real excuse. It's a hobby, so I do what I can. But I'm looking forward to. There's one video in particular that I'm looking forward to releasing soon. So yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I've been reading lately, and hopefully something in there is interesting to you, and I hopefully I can find something of value from discussing it. So what have I been reading lately? One that I mentioned in my last Friday Reads type video, and that's actually the one that I'm really excited to post a review about soon, to post a video, is A Thousand Acres by Jane Smiley. That one is the Pulitzer Prize winning retelling of King Lear in a modern agricultural setting in Iowa. I really enjoyed it. Actually, one of my favorite things that I've read this year. I read it with some of my family members who had more mixed feelings on it. I think having read King Lear before reading this book is probably going to be helpful for most people, because you can still definitely understand and appreciate the story without having read King Lear, but some of those parallels really make you think about not only the original play but also the novel as you're reading it in a different way. But yeah, I'm going to have a separate video on that one. It's probably going to be kind of long because I got pretty carried away. I thought it was there was really a lot to talk about. So hopefully I'll have that one up in the next week or two. I've also been making my way through War and Peace, which I mentioned in the previous Friday Reads video. I'm happy to say that I am still making my way through, which is an achievement in itself because it's a long one. If you happen to know of it, I think it's pretty much one of the longest novels ever. Yeah, 1,300 pages is how long my edition is. A little bit over 1,300 pages. I'm enjoying it a lot. It's more interesting than you might think from the title, which is, I don't know. I think when you hear about some of these novels for the first time and you have no context, like War and Peace just sounds like it would be the dullest possible novel. That's how I felt about some of these other, I don't know, Pride and Prejudice is sort of a similar. It doesn't really give you that much about what the novel is going to contain, but luckily we've had 200, 300 years of people reading these novels to tell us that, hey, yeah, this one's worth reading, even if the title isn't the most striking. Yeah, so I'm really enjoying that one. I'm trying to catch up with this slow read along where you're supposed to read a chapter a day, but I've kind of been reading in bursts, like reading a whole section at a time and then not reading for a few days and then reading another section. I think right now I'm about a month and a half behind on that one, so not necessarily getting closer than I was before, but at least not getting further. But yeah, actually, if you're considering, if this is if you've thought about reading War and Peace before, but it's you've been intimidated by it, or just haven't known if it was worth taking on, I really am enjoying it. The characters are really cleverly drawn. There's it's interesting. Like it's interesting, and not in a way where you have to be like really I don't know, like sometimes when I read Jane Austen or when I've read like Charles Dickens, it's interesting in a way that you have to be like really understanding like the subtle nuances and subtexts of everything. War and Peace, I would say, isn't really like, I think honestly you don't have to have a lot of like you don't really have to understand the society that it's in too much. You just have to understand human nature, which of course we all do to some extent because we are humans. What else have I been reading? Okay, a couple books that I've read, books or I don't know, texts that I've read with Davood Gosley's reading group, which I mention often. I mentioned a little bit last time. We finished up reading Better Living Through Criticism by A.O. Scott, the New York Times film critic, who I think is no longer, as of a couple years ago, is no longer doing film criticism, but he's doing maybe literary criticism. I'm not totally sure. That book is called Better Living Through Criticism, How to Think About Art, Pleasure, Beauty, and Truth. The sub or blurb on it is, the New York Times film critic shows us why we need criticism now more than ever. So it feels like it's a very lofty aspiration to show us why criticism is valuable. But I enjoyed it a lot. I think the one thing that I really appreciate is that the author kind of plays both sides of, like, he is a critic and he critiques himself as a critic. Like, he takes on the voice of skeptical audience who are like, oh, why would we bother criticizing music, film, literature? Like, you're no fun. Why can't you just watch the movie and have fun? Which is a common response that a lot of people have to criticism. And you know, we've probably all felt it ourselves sometimes. But at the same time, we've probably all been the critic as well, who's like, this music, like, how can you possibly compare this, you know, popular song to this, you know, masterpiece that's my favorite, you know, classic rock piece of history. I don't know, like, we all have our, like, favorite literature or favorite music that we find that we feel that there's some real value in it that goes beyond just kind of what it is at face value. And I think this book really explores that in a way that's interesting. I thought that the beginning was pretty strong, and it definitely ended strongly. He actually ends with an example from Ratatouille, which is kind of interesting because he's talking about, I haven't watched Ratatouille in a while, the Pixar movie about the rats that cook. But one of the characters, I guess the villain in Ratatouille, is a restaurant food critic who has been constantly disappointed by the food that the restaurants have had to offer him. So it really, this movie really spoke to A.O. Scott in a way that I think, as a critic, he was really able to appreciate it, and that was just really lovely to see how he reacts to Ratatouille. It made me want to go back and watch Ratatouille again, although I haven't yet. So yeah, definitely an interesting read if it's something that if you like thinking about criticism, which, if you're watching people talk about books on YouTube, maybe there's a higher chance than usual that you might be interested in this. Right now with Davood's group, we're reading Albert Camus' Exile in the Kingdom, which is a collection of short stories. We've only read a few so far, but it's a collection of short stories, pretty short. Like, most of them I can read in an hour or so. Maybe look back on a little bit afterwards and just kind of clarify some things I didn't fully get. But yeah, it doesn't take too much time to read one of these stories. They're very I don't know, they're philosophical in a way, but not really too philosophical. Not philosophical in the way that, like, you don't have to be a philosopher to find something in them. You just have to have experienced some of this, like, I don't know. You just have to have experienced life and reflection on it. The feeling of not really understanding what it is that you're doing in life, the feeling of kind of being lost and trying to make sense of things and trying to change who you are, or, like, discover what your identity is, if you even think that you have an identity. I don't know. This is all making it sound really lofty and inaccessible, but it actually is very accessible. The way that Camus writes really really paints a picture of the scene that his characters are in. They're very relatable characters and very very common but well illustrated situations, like the one that we just discussed today. Actually, was called. Well, it's called many things depending on which translation you read, but in my version, it was called The Silent Men. It's about these workers who they're coopers. They're coopers, but their trade is kind of becoming obsolete. Coopering is making barrels. Like, I don't even know how you do it, but this is a craft that takes a lot of skill and a lot of training to acquire the skill. But they're kind of becoming obsolete because now, people in modern times don't really need barrels to transport, I don't know, liquids or whatever you transport in barrels, like grains. They can just transport them in tanks. Anyway, I'm getting besides the point, but it's about these workers they've been on strike, the strike failed, and now they're coming back to work, and just kind of the emotional experience that they go through coming back after not having succeeded at getting better pay, but also still have their jobs, and they have some sort of acknowledgement of that being at least something in itself. Yeah, definitely. If you're interested, I'd recommend. I think it's a good way to get started with Camus. I've only read the only other Camus that I've read was also with Davood's group over a year ago. I think at this point it was The Fall, which is not super long. I'm not sure if you call it like a novella, but that one is significantly longer than these short stories. That one I probably took like 3 or 4 sittings of maybe an hour at a time to get through The Fall. And I think that one there's just more to take in because it does take longer to develop. But I think these are a good introduction to Camus if you're interested. Yeah, so that's what I've been reading with Davood's group. I'll put a link to his channel and the stuff that we've been reading. Always interesting to get a chance to discuss these with a broader group. Okay, what else? Mystery. I actually haven't been reading too much mystery lately. I listened to another Nio Marsh mystery, which I still haven't gotten my reviews out, my videos about the first 2 Nio Marsh books, although I think I've written both of them at this point. Yeah, I've got to, maybe after this I'll record one of those because I'm excited to talk about them, something a little bit fresh and new in the mystery vein. So the one that I just read is called The Nursing Home Murder, I think. Either The Nursing Home Mystery or The Nursing Home Murder. And it's a little bit funny because a nursing home, as anyone who has read this book will tell you, apparently means something different. I'm not sure if it used to mean something different or if it still means something in Britain that's different than what I think of it to mean. I think of a nursing home murder as like a bunch of elderly people living in a community who have nurses taking care of them. One of them loses it and murders someone. That's not what happens here. It's actually more like the hospital murder. So a prominent and, I don't know, widely hated politician is, well, not hated by everyone, a polarizing politician, member of parliament, I think, is having a surgery and, well, he ends up dead. That's not a spoiler. It happens pretty much immediately. And then there's, I enjoyed the whole investigation because it's kind of ridiculous. Like just about every single person in the entire book, even people who are not that related or like not that much in the action, everyone has a reason for wanting this guy dead. Like, there's the woman who he's spurned, like, he had an affair with a woman. Now she, feels like she's been betrayed by him. There's his wife who knows that he's had an affair. There's his, I don't know, his sister who might be inheriting money. There's just everyone. And there's like all sorts of people who like want him dead for political reasons. There's like probably like 8 different motives or something like that. And I enjoyed the whole process of it. The end is actually ridiculous though. Like, I won't say more about that until I do the spoiler-filled review, but the solution is not really satisfying at all, which is a little bit of a shame, because I think it was, despite being kind of far-fetched, I think it was a fun mystery, but I still enjoyed it. So I'll definitely talk about that at some point. And I still am going to read Curtain by Agatha Christie. I was going to say by Hercule Poirot. By Agatha Christie, the final Hercule Poirot mystery. I'm looking forward to that one. I think I've just been waiting so long for it that now no moment feels like really the right moment to start on it, but I probably am going to start reading that one soon. I haven't actually read it yet, so it's not just that I'm slow on my review. I actually just haven't read it. So a little bit slow lately with the mysteries, but that's how it is. I guess there's one... Well, okay. Another book that I'm reading right now is sort of a mystery, but not really. Not really in the same way. I'm reading In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, which is based on a true story. I actually don't really know to what extent it's like entirely true versus like there's artistic liberty, because I think some of the things that I've read so far have been, it seems like they're sort of guessing what the victims were thinking, on their last day alive. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. It's about a family that was murdered in cold blood. There's at the point I'm at, which is not too far into the book, we've seen who the killers are, and they're not obviously connected to the victims. They just came and basically did this cold-blooded murder and then left the town. And everyone's trying to figure out why this happened. So I don't know, not a pleasant read by any means. That's an understatement. Yeah, something about, I think, despite being someone who reads a lot of stories about people getting murdered in these sort of puzzle mystery ways, or even, I don't mind like a nice spy novel, or novels that have like some adventurous component, or like there is killing and backstabbing, but like it's more it feels more like action and intrigue. Like this one feels definitely like, it feels uncomfortable in some ways that I'm still not sure what to make of it, but I'm going to continue and see. This is a pretty well known I was going to say crime fiction, but I guess true crime is sort of what it is. And I think it may be one of the earlier instances of like the true crime novel, which is probably part of why it's really famous. Okay, so I'm reading that right now. I'm listening to that one. A couple other things that I finished lately reading. A Wild Sheep Chase by Haruki Murakami. I listened to about a month or two ago. Probably about a month ago I listened to it. That one is the first book by Murakami that I've ever read. It was interesting in a lot of, like, it's very strange. I'm not going to say too much about what it's about, because I guess for some people this also is a mystery, a wild sheep chase, like understanding just what it is that is going. Like there's some strange things happening to the main character. He's summoned to he's summoned to find a particular sheep, a wild sheep. So this is like a wild sheep chase, which I assume is kind of a play on a wild goose chase. And there are like aspects of this novel that I really liked. Like some of Murakami's writing is really evokes the scenery, or just there's a certain tone to it that I appreciated. But in the end, I think it's just too weird. Like, maybe this is just me reading Murakami for the first time and not kind of understanding what it is that people really find in his work. But I think like there is this one, I guess, has a plot to it, but there's not really like a I mean, there's this wild sheep chase, but it doesn't feel like the novel really goes anywhere particular. It just sort of happens. And a lot of people say that just the experience of reading it, the way that he writes, the whole like one thing that I find weird is that a lot of people I listened to people talking about this book and read some reviews or reflections that people have written about it, and they've commented positively on this book, saying like it feels like you're in a dream. And I mean, I think that's true. Like this book does feel like a dream in that it just seems like it's very mysterious. Like it's not completely like it's not like a fantasy world like Harry Potter or something. Like it's the real world, except then every so often something just happens that's very strange, or there are certain elements that are just bizarre. Some people have called it magical realism. I'm not really sure to what extent it is that or not, but yeah, I guess my first reaction when I heard that was like, I guess I'm happy to just have my dreams when I sleep and then read like actual stories when I'm reading a book. Maybe I'm being a little bit too negative about this book. I'm definitely intrigued by, like, just because Murakami is such a popular writer and a famous writer, and there were a lot of people that really appreciated this book enough that I don't feel I can really just discount it as like, it's weird, no point to it, like postmodern, strange stuff going on. You never really understand what the point is. Maybe there's not really a point to it. I could say that. I think that's too dismissive, but at the same time, whatever there is to find there, I don't think I've found it yet. So if you have read Murakami, in particular A Wild Sheep Chase, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. I know this is just one of his many writings. It has some things in common with his other writing, but yeah, that was my first experience with him. Yeah, and one other book that I read since my last Friday reads, I listened to this one as well. It was called Bootstrapped, Liberating Ourselves from the American Dream by Alyssa Court. And occasionally I like to read or listen to these sort of popular audience political books. I mean, they don't have to be political. They could be popular history or other topics. I guess I would put this in with a theme of like, political books or like current affairs books. I think actually when I was looking specifically for something like this to read, and I think what I came to searching for was like books about current affairs from 2023, and this was one of the ones that came up. And yeah, I like this kind of book that takes on an interesting idea, or like looks at the world, or looks at the current political climate, or particular economic situation or something like that, looks at it in a way that's sort of a new perspective. And sometimes I think, like, I don't know, a few years ago I read the book The Big Sort, which is actually not really a particularly new book, but it talks about how it talks about how Americans in particular are becoming politically sorted into, like, they're living among communities. We are living among communities, for those of us who live in the United States and maybe elsewhere also, where everyone in your community kind of has similar political and cultural beliefs. Maybe not cultural, but like political beliefs, at least in the political realm. Like, you've self-selected your community so that they just reinforce your beliefs. So that was a book that I really enjoyed, and I thought, even though the idea of political sorting has kind of already entered into the public discourse in many instances already, I thought that was an example of where the author raised kind of an interesting new way of looking at current affairs. This one, Bootstrapped, I didn't really actually think was that great. I do think that the central idea to it was interesting. I don't think that it's particularly, like, I don't think it's especially new or like something that you couldn't have thought of by yourself. So, I mean, I read the subtitle, Liberating Ourselves from the American Dream. The idea of this book, Bootstrapped, is trying to make the case that this myth of being able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or basically the myth of the self-made man, like someone who is able to, without external support, like totally by themselves, like have this grit or this tenacity that enables them to be successful. It really is a myth. And I mean, the author makes that point right away, that the idea of pulling up yourself by your own bootstraps was always kind of meant to be like a ridiculous thing. It wasn't really supposed to be possible. Like, it became an expression because it's like actually not something you can do. So the author makes the case that this myth is really, it's harmful to us because not only does it allow us to sort of dismiss others' suffering or others' like lack of success, like in a conventional way, it encourages us to view that as like their own fault. But it's harmful to us, like even when we think about ourselves as trying to achieve the American dream, to try to achieve success. It encourages us to view it as a failure when we don't succeed, even when it's due to circumstances that are kind of beyond our control. Or it also discourages us from seeking help in situations where it actually would be valuable to receive assistance from those around us, which is something that I really agree with. Like, I think that I like this idea that we shouldn't think of ourselves as like completely responsible for our own success. We do have lots of support, and a lot of this support is our family and friends that are near us. Even people who I have, like my support for doing these videos is people who have conversations with me in the comments or online, and I have support groups who support me in that sort of way. But it seems like the way that this topic is discussed in this book is just too superficial. Like, for one thing, it's too one-sided. Like, I appreciate a nice nuanced discussion of like, what is the myth of bootstrapping? Like, what is there anything that it offers us? Is there any way that it helps us positively, or is it completely negative? But the author sort of writes in a way that suggests that it doesn't completely rule out the possibility that there's anything positive about it, but it pretty much takes the side of like, bootstrapping is bad. Like, the myth of bootstrapping is just entirely bad, and we should be relying on others around us for help. And another reason why I really, like, besides this feeling too simplistic to me, like, there actually, even though I agree that we really can't the idea of the self-made man or self-made woman is not really something that's actually viable. Like, there is a reason why this myth has an appeal. It's because people want to feel like they have control, and when you have circumstances that are somewhat within your control, you want to like seize the opportunities that you have, even if some of it is outside of your control. But the author kind of glazes over that aspect, and then also the way that this book is written kind of just equates bootstrapping with conservatives, like political conservatives in the US, which I think there is some foundation to the arguments that she's making. Like, she talks about welfare programs, and she talks about I don't know, some particular myths of, or forms of the bootstrapping myth that involved, you know, like Laura Ingalls Wilder, her family going out on the frontier and roughing it and really making a life for themselves, even though they did have a lot of support from other people, including, you know, the government that pushed the Native Americans off the land and gave them like a parcel of land that they were able to settle on. But in the way that it's written, I think the author, especially because of the examples that she uses, the author pretty quickly just makes this bootstrapping idea out to be like, it turns into basically a conservative versus liberal argument, and not like one that is even particularly like new or innovative. Like, she's just kind of rehashing the same arguments that we've heard many times, you know, about why conservatives don't think welfare programs are good and why liberals think that welfare programs are good, and, you know, why the New Deal was good or bad, you know, if you're conservative. It just feels like I'm not really sure who is going to benefit from this book, because it's not really challenging anyone. I guess it's challenging you if you're a conservative reading it, but like, if you're a conservative reading it, you probably rightfully are saying like, this is a completely one-sided view of the situation, and like, you know, it's not like conservatives have never supported one another or acknowledged, you know, each other as contributing to their, you know, acknowledge your neighbors as contributing to your success. It's yeah, I'm kind of going on a rant about this one now, but I think that there's some interesting, I think the core idea of this book about bootstrapping is interesting, but I wouldn't recommend it, because I think this could be done better. And I think that there are some elements and some examples in this book that were interesting, were intriguing, but like, most of the examples, like, obviously I should have mentioned right away, like, you know, Donald Trump is like the number one example of a bootstrapper that she puts out there, which is like, well, okay, yeah, like, he does have an image as a self-made man, but like, you're kind of choosing your political alignment, like, and who this book is gonna appeal to when you start, like, you know, in the second chapter, just start ragging on Trump and how he's not really a self-made man. Like, okay, I mean, I sort of agree, but it just doesn't really, make for like, for deep discussion, unfortunately. All right, that's pretty much all the stuff that I've read recently. So yeah, I hope you've been reading some interesting books as well. There's some relaxing books, maybe some I don't know, puzzling books if you're a mystery reader. I don't know. Don't know what I'm saying right now. I'm just kind of rambling, but yeah, I hope you've been enjoying some good reading, and let me know what you've been reading, and yeah, hopefully I will have some additional thought out reviews for you coming up as well soon. So until then, happy reading and enjoy the spring.